Hey everyone, today we have Shawn Finder, who is the founder of AutoClose. Now, AutoClose is a sales engagement platform with built-in verified B2B data all in one to help sales teams close more deals. Now, what's really interesting here is Shawn has successfully exited AutoClose when he got acquired by VanillaSoft back in 2020. So we're really going to get the full picture here from start to finish. So I'm really excited about that. Shawn, welcome, man. How are you doing?
I'm great, Jim. Thanks for having me on the show. I look forward to it.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. So, Shawn, let's get started with the founding story. Like, how did it all begin?
Okay, so how did it all begin? I'll give you a whole quick picture. I got my MBA in finance, and then decided I wanted to be an entrepreneur. Took a VP of sales job, which is a six-figure job here in Toronto, Canada. And then on day one, came up with the idea around data. And I asked the CTO at the time, I'm like, hey, like we're buying all this data and the data is just not good quality. Like, why don't we build a business where we provide good quality? Fast forward 1 year, started my first company in 2014, which was called Exchange Leads, which was only data. We parlayed that in 2017, which was AutoClose, which was more the sales engagement. We already had the data, so we put them all into one platform, and we grew that for about 2.5 years. And in October of 2020, we got acquired by VanillaSoft after about 11 months of negotiation.
Wow. 11 months of negotiation. That's nuts.
Yeah, it was, we actually met at our Canadian conference out in Ottawa, SaaS North Conference.
Right.
And as a startup, the one thing you never really worry about keeping your books up to date. You don't have time for that. You're growing the company.
Yeah.
So that's why it took a little bit longer than I think it would have taken if we actually had accurate audited books, etc.
Fair enough. Yeah, and I'm definitely I think we're gonna definitely dig into that a little bit further. But going back to the founding story, so you saw this need for just better data.
Yep.
And if we're talking about when you started Exchange Lead, what was it, like 2013? 2014. So what was the landscape looking like back then? I mean, the Zoom infos of the world maybe existed, but nobody knew about them. Like, talk to me about that. Like, what did the landscape look like then? And then now, what does it look like? And you're in a pretty competitive
That's a great
space.
question.
Yeah.
So what really came to mind is I started working for a company, and I've always had my ideas and stuff. And it was a time where data.com, if everyone remembers, there was data.com, which got acquired by Salesforce. And it got acquired for over $250 million. Yeah. And I said to myself, why don't I build something very similar? And even if I can only get 10% of that, I've made a $25 million company. Yeah. And that's why I actually came up with the idea. I actually built the exact same, it was called Jigsaw.
Okay.
The same Jigsaw, which was data.com, which was Salesforce, which was acquired. I built the exact same thing that was acquired a year before and thought I could redo it. Yeah. I didn't get to that scale, but that's where I came up with the idea to actually build a quality data subscription model where it was more of like, give and take data from our platform.
Awesome. And so in that journey, then, I'm sure you learned a lot, but the big question everyone always asks is like, well, was it bootstrapped, funded? Like, how was that?
I always bootstrapped everything. Early on, I bootstrapped everything, because I always had trouble working for people and I didn't want to have to answer to investors. Investors always like to come on and say, spend your money very quickly, where I was like, you know what? I wanted the lifestyle company where I could spend or I could save or I can, hoard it in the bank, but I didn't want to ever risk that I was down to my last 2-3 months of money in the bank. So we always kept over 18 months of just runway in the bank. So that was the reason why I chose to bootstrap. And then what was interesting is if you're in Canada, you own the company, but Rogers is one of the biggest companies in Canada, top 5. They became one of our clients of Exchange Leads, which I ended up taking the money I received from Rogers and parlaying that into the money to build AutoClose, to bootstrap it. And that's how I bootstrapped my first 2 companies.
Wow. So both companies were bootstrapped.
Both companies fully bootstrapped, never took $1 in funding.
Wow. That's amazing. So that's kind of like, for me, when I'm thinking about SaaS, right? And like how you really scaled to the point, again, like where you could exit, where you have like a sales team running and you got your deals coming in, you've got your customer success and all of that stuff. I guess my question is like, is it much more difficult to do that? Or for you, you're just like, well, I'm just going to run a business like a business is meant to be run. We're going to have profits. We're going to reinvest it and just kind of go from there. Right. Like,
so that's exactly what we did. We took our profits every year. We grew our headcount. So it actually went in stages. At first, it was me, 3 of us that were in a boardroom, and we would do it ourselves. Okay. Then what happened? We took our profits from year one and we scaled pretty quickly. We were doing, within our first 6 months, I was doing $500,000.
Wow.
And then what we did was we took that money and we said, okay, now we're going to get support people. And then we're going to get outbound salespeople. So SDRs. And then we realized we're going to see it. So every time we got more money, we just got more people. We ended up getting about 36 people in the company within a year and a half from 3, simply by continuing. Every cent we made, we kept putting back in. For the first year, I also took a 0 salary, which was looking back I don't think I could do that now, but I took a 0 salary for my first year, which helped kind of build it. But yeah, it was, one thing I do want to mention is a lot of people think that the hard stuff at the beginning, it's such a hustle, it's such a grind. That was the fun part. The fun part was stressing for the first year. After that, when you start getting people in the positions like, oh, okay, well, like now I can go to Hawaii for 2 weeks and enjoy my vacation, but it's like, I still like to be in the weeds of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And then like, did you think that, so we're talking a lot about like the people, but then how do you think not getting funded affected your product development and like rolling out new features? How did it affect that?
We were slow. And that's a great question. So the one thing I do look back at is we got acquired for a very, very good amount, everything was good. But I always say to myself, if I took $1 million over that 18 months and gave marketing and sales in this, what would my valuation have been? Now, it is a catch-22. We were delayed with the features, but we could provide better support than a company like Outreach or Sales Lab, which we're very bigger. We're a lot bigger. So we couldn't do the features as quickly, but we can provide better service. So some people like the better service and some people like the better features. So that was one of the challenges we did have. But looking back now, I mean, I wish we could have developed things quicker, hired people quicker. But then again, if you're going to give up 20% of your company versus Bootstrapped, I got to make 20% more in revenue just to pay off my investors. So it is a catch-22, Shane.
Yeah, fair enough. And I think like something you mentioned as well is it's a lifestyle that you want to live, right? Do you want to always be answering to somebody? Like you started a business to be your own boss, and then you're suddenly no longer really your own boss, right?
It's been a big change. So we got acquired, and in the acquisition, I have to work a minimum of 18 months for the company that acquired us.
Gotcha.
After 2 weeks of having to answer to a CEO, a CRO, and everyone, it was like it was a big change for me. It was like it's an ego thing too. Like I was the man, and now it's like, can I take a vacation day this day? Can I expense this now? My phone, like it was just it was a big change.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's switch gears and let's switch over to AutoClose. So when you were now, developing AutoClose, that was a company you wanted to build, and you saw, other giants out there. Talk to me about that. Like, how do you go about entering a market where there are other giants that exist and it's a very competitive landscape? Like, I'd be scared, honestly, to get into the B2B data and, sales automation market right now. There's so much out there. So talk to me about your thoughts there.
Well, there's a few things. One is everyone says that, but let me tell you, the world's big enough that they can have more than one. Now, it's a lot more saturated now than it was even when I did. But I will tell you this, my personality, people that are listening, I come from a competitive tennis background. So I was actually a world ranked tennis player, top Canadian tennis player in Canada. So losing is never an option to me.
Yeah.
So when I go in, and I don't care if they're a bigger, better, in my head, I tell myself I'm not going to lose and I'm going to do it. And if I had to go build an iPad to go up against Apple, I still would. That's just me, because I know with my persistence, my hustle, that I'll make it successful. I might not make billions of dollars, but I will make a business out of it. And when I was going, one of the ways I came up with AutoClose was actually when I was working for the company and I built exchange leads, I was using a now AutoClose competitor. And I was there and I was like, this is a cool product. I'm just going to build the exact same thing and build it better. And we did. And by the time a year and a half goes by, we were actually beating them in revenue when they were the top. I'm not going to mention the name, but they were the top player in the industry that had both data and the sales engagement in one. So we were second at that point, but anything can be done if you put your mind to it.
Fair enough. So I like that. And I believe in that as well. I come from like a door-to-door background actually in Toronto where you are, and it was tough. So definitely that hustle mentality is there. But, for the founders that are listening to this and wondering like, well, you were successful, but something a little bit more practical. Like, how did you get your first few customers? How did you scale your sales engine, and again, without funding?
Yeah. So this is the most important. And if you're listening, I wouldn't only listen, I'd probably write this down. Okay. What I did for AutoClose is 6 months before I even launched the platform, I had a newsletter go out. And what I did for 6 months is I every week showed the progression of the platform to my audience. So what does that mean? Imagine you're building a condo and every floor, every window, every doorknob, every cupboard is being sent to you. When that condo is built, you feel like you built it. So when I actually built AutoClose, I had them so engaged in what I was building. We finished this feature, take a look. We finished this, take a look. We're launching in 4 months. When the launch day came and I did the launch, every single person wanted to sign up. And we had this point on 3 people. We were doing 16-hour days, demo book. We were converting 80% because people didn't even care what our product did at that point. They were just like they feel like they were an owner with me of building it. So it's like we built it from the ground up, but they were part of it. So I would recommend building that email list 6 months before you have an MVP even ready.
Wow. That's huge. I hope, I hope people did write that down. That's a very interesting strategy. And I haven't heard that one before. People definitely talk about, like getting some pre-sales, like stuff like that, getting like some people committed and whatnot. Right. But that's like not like 6 months before your MVP is even ready. So that's huge.
But I want to mention one more thing that you just mentioned. So the best advice I've ever got before I started AutoClose was a guy named David Cancel from Drift. He's the CEO of Drift. And he was at a SaaS conference here in Toronto. And I said, well, what do I charge? I'm just launching. What do I charge?
Yeah.
And here's my words of advice. He said, Shawn, charge anything. Charge $1, charge $2 a month, charge anything. If they're committed for $1 a month, they're committed more than if you give them a free access. So what I did was with our first 100 clients, I would go on a call and be like, so Shaheem, I just showed you the demo. How much would you pay for AutoClose? And you'd be like, honestly, we're going through a recession, Shawn. I can only afford $10 a month. It's yours. And then the next person would come and be like, honestly, Shawn, I would never use it, but I'd probably give you $1 a month. It's yours. And for the first 100, they told me what they would pay. Sometimes they'd say 30, 20, 35, 50 cents, whatever they said the first 100, I gave it to them for that. Yeah. And that was my first 100 paying clients.
Nuts. Wow. I love it. Honestly, I love it. And I love the energy that you have when you're explaining this. And I think like, that's where people get so lost in the weeds of things, into figuring out the best pricing strategy, the go-to-market strategy, the best features to put in and this and that. When it's like, just get someone to open their wallet for you. If someone is willing to pay even $1 for what you have, it validates that you have built something, because it's hard to get someone to pay for something.
Yep.
Yeah. I love it. That's awesome. Cool. So now, exchange leads, then we have AutoClose. Did you start these companies with the intent of exiting, or did you think that your vision, or did you have a vision of, you know what, I'm going to build this into the next big, number one Zoom info type of solution?
So that's a great question. I mean, any founder that says they're not thinking of the exit, or not thinking of the money, etc., they're just lying to you without swearing. They're lying to you. Yeah. Now, was I looking for an acquisition when I got acquired? No. I actually was. I was ready to grow it. Because we were at the fun part. We were everyone I was taking a very nice salary. I was paying everyone very good. We're making money. We're profitable. I wasn't ready to sell, but you've lived here in Toronto. Actually, you're in Vancouver. It's the same. The real estate's very expensive. Yeah. And it was like, you know what? I've built something. I can get a beautiful 4-bedroom house paid for from this acquisition. Yeah. I'm still young enough. I could do it again. And I'll probably do it some point again, Right now, I'm not at the stage yet, but probably soon. So for me, it was like, I was not ready to do it. But then I thought about I could, and then we had COVID start, and I was like, well, I could also put all that money to the stock market and probably double it. I could double my own company. So I was weighing all the options. Then you also have like the people that started with me. At this point, they're all underpaid. They all want to look for the next big thing. My right-hand man wanted to start his own company. It was like, do I have to, at that point, it was like, I have to raise, take debt. So I wasn't looking for the acquisition, but I'm happy it did happen. Because it was a very successful one, and on to bigger and better things in the future.
Yeah. And I think the big takeaway there is that if you're a startup founder in the tech world, you don't have to build the next unicorn. I think it's something you said in your podcast too, is that like, hey, like you might not even be the best person to take it to that level. You might, if you want, like what's best for the company might even be that it's like somebody else that's kind of doing that. Right. But I think that's the biggest takeaway. It's like, you know what, like consider your life, consider the lifestyle that you want to live, what you are going to be very happy, the lifestyle you're very happy living with. And then if you get that opportunity, then go for it. It doesn't have to be $1 billion company under your wing.
Yeah. And what I would say to that is I think founders don't understand that I find there's 3 goals as a founder, or 3 milestones, let's say 1 million, 10 million, 100 million. Just because you can take a company to 1 million doesn't mean you can take it to 10 million. And just because you can take a company to 10 million doesn't mean you can make it to 100 million.
Yeah.
As a founder, you have to be able to sell yourself, I'm not the right person to take this to the next level. So we got to the million mark very, very quickly. And we were growing, but did I think I had the people right there to get to 10 million to 100 million? No. So if you're not the right person to take you there, you got to make that change. It's still, I hear a lot of people that companies are on the 10 million mark, they're 10, 11 million, 12 million, 13 million. That CEO might not be the guy to get you to that unicorn. So you have to be able to know what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are. And if those weaknesses are going to not get you to the milestone, you got to put someone else in position. You can become an executive chairman, go down to a CMO, CRO, whatever you'd like.
Right. I think that requires a lot of self-awareness. I think a lot of the things you're saying, it requires a lot of self-awareness, right? About the life that you want to live, about what your capabilities are. And I think this is something you might be able to really give some good feedback on, is being people aware. You mentioned that one person on your team is entrepreneurial. They might have wanted to start their own company. Someone else was just not getting paid as much as they really should be getting paid, right? So that awareness, how important of a role has that played in the companies that you've started?
Yeah. So I've there's pros and cons. The guy that I kind of had as my last company, he left a big, Bay Street job here to work for me as a startup. And we fought a lot throughout it. And he was a best friend of mine. Now we're still best friends, but it was tough work and doing the personal and business, but he could have got paid probably double what he was making for me. Right. So you're going to only have people for a certain amount of time. If they want to start with a startup, they're going to be like, okay, I want to grow. I want to learn how to be a founder. I want to learn the ins and outs, how to do your balance sheet, income statement, all the fun stuff you got to do as a founder. But at some point they'd be like, but I can go across the road and make $250,000.
Yeah.
So I had to be very careful. It was at a point where I think we took it to the point where we needed to either, as I said, raise money, take on debt, bring some new people in. So you'll get that feeling when you get a little bit stagnant for a few quarters in a row. Got
it. Cool. So Shawn, let's switch gears now. Let's talk about exiting. So let's talk about that story. How did that opportunity come your way? And what did you learn through that 11-month negotiation process?
So we met at the conference. He came to Toronto. I wasn't looking to get acquired. Always a good thing when you're trying to get acquired is when you're not looking, because you'll probably always get a low ball offer and you'll always think your company's worth 10 times more than that offer. So you get that floor, you get that ceiling, and then you know where your negotiation is. And obviously you want to get the negotiation closer to that ceiling than the floor. So that was one thing that really worked well, but there were certain things within there. Legal bills are, we spent about $50,000 just on legals. Working capital is one that a lot of people forget. So we are a subscription model. So for example, we're taking your money today for using our platform for a year, but when you get acquired, that revenue is actually owed to them because they have to take care of those clients for the year. So if you're doing $1 million in revenue, but $300,000 is revenue you've already received, but you haven't provided the service yet, that actually goes to the acquisition. That was something that was about 48 hours before the acquisition. And I was like, I knew about working capital, but I was like, damn, I did not know my working capital was that much. And that was really lower in the valuation. So certain things like that. And one thing I would say is, recommendation for the audience is, I wish I had my books better early on. Like I never focused on audited. I never looked at, make sure things were in the right categories on my financial and balance sheet, keep them up to date, because as I said, you never know when the acquisition will happen.
Got it. How do you prepare your company to be acquired? Like, what changes, because let's say you're in that high growth mode, right? So everything is going towards sales, marketing, like let's build this engine, let's grow. How do you switch gears? Like what changes?
Well, I think the worst thing that changed and the worst feeling I had was because we were all a big family at our company was you can't tell anybody because, you can't let anyone know. So I think it was October 30th, we were auto close. And the next morning I'm announcing on a team thing that we got acquired and the new CEO's coming on. It's like, it's a lot to handle. And, people didn't know it was coming. So that was probably the hardest thing, was not being able to tell anybody, especially that I had a really good relationship with them. You just can't tell them because you don't want them to leave. You don't want to spread rumors. And if it falls through, you've now told them you're getting acquired, it doesn't happen. And they're like, oh, but you must be trying to get acquired. So that was the toughest part, was telling people I'm really, really close with, without any notice.
That's tough. And do you think, is that typically how you've seen it happen? Like companies, they just don't tell anybody. Like it's maybe the executive board that knows.
It is the only executive board, only a few people, even when you're letting people go. Now it's like the executives, we talk every week, we know who people are getting fired, but you can't say that to people because just words spread fast in the company. So there's always little groups of people that are friends. You got to make sure, who's in which pocket. It's tough, tough conversations.
Fair enough. Okay. Let's talk about what's next. Now auto close, still very successful. You are in your 18 months, what's next for you and what's next for auto close?
Yeah. So auto close is still being run under the VanillaSoft brand. I am currently, so the deal I had was cash and equity. So I do have incentives still to grow with VanillaSoft. So, right now, I would say down the road, definitely going to start something again. I love being an entrepreneur. But right now, with where I am in my life, as I said, have a child coming, probably not the best time to start and have zero income coming in and bootstrapping or raising money. So I would say, the near future, not the short term, but soon enough, I'll get back to the entrepreneurial bandwagon. You'll hear from me again.
That's awesome. I'm looking forward to it. What's one piece of advice that you can leave our founders who are most likely early to mid stage?
Yeah. Nothing happens overnight and it's a roller coaster. You're going to have your peaks and troughs. Keep plugging away. But I will say, whatever you think it's going to happen, a developer tells you it's going to take 2 weeks, it's going to take 2 months. If somebody says they're going to sign up this week, it's going to be next week. So make sure you have patience. It'll all work out. Just keep being persistent, but nothing happens overnight.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Shawn. And if everyone, they want to find you, where can they connect with you?
I'm always on LinkedIn, Shawn Finder on LinkedIn. You can come to autoclose with a K.com. Email me at Shawn, SHAWN @AUTOKLOSE.com at any time. More than happy to talk to any entrepreneur that needs any advice, because I know I got a lot of advice when I was moving through before my acquisitions.
Awesome. And you can listen to Shawn's podcast as well, the 0 to 5 million podcast. I think it's on all channels. So thank you so much, Shawn, for being on our show.
Thank you, Shaheem.